When we think, and I specialize on predators and predator and prey interactions. So when we think about a predator and a prey interaction, sharks eating a reef fish is one of the most common interactions that comes to our mind, especially in the marine world. But a predator and a prey interaction is more than that final stage. It's actually a series of steps that progress from an overlap between the predator and the prey. They need to be in the same place. They need to encounter and detect each other until the predator can decide to take an attack and eat the prey. So as you can see, both the predators and the prey can take different behavioral decisions throughout these stages to either find food for the predator or to avoid becoming food. So that's what I study, what behavioral decisions both predators and prey take at different stages. And I focus on sharks, but sharks are not always predators. We always think about sharks as predators. But when they are young, they usually fall prey to different predators because of their small size. So this takes me to the first two examples that I'm going to show you. So what can they do to avoid becoming the meal? So how sharks behave as prey. So if we look at the first stages of that interaction overlap, we have strategies to avoid predation that are called proactive strategies, where these prey are proactively avoiding encountering a predator. So one of the most renowned strategies in shark ecology, a proactive strategy to avoid predators, is the use of nursery habitats. I'm pretty sure maybe some of you have heard about it. It's where we find the baby sharks. These habitats are supposed to be free of predators, or at least there's not many of them. They're usually coastal habitats, very close to the coast. So I'm going to show you two examples of these predator and prey interactions in these nurseries. One, for sharks that lay eggs. So not all sharks give birth to live sharks. At least 40% of the sharks lay eggs. So my first example is about a shark that lays eggs. And my second example is going to be a shark that gives birth to live sharks. So the first one, I call it sharks in the forest. And you're going to understand why. This shark here, this is a newly hatched cat shark. It's the red-spotted cat shark. This shark is found in the south of Chile, and it lays eggs that from these eggs, a small baby shark of about 5 grams hatches after about 11 to 12 months. So it's a long time. So during that time, they need to find a place to put their eggs and that they are safe. In sharks, there's no parental care. So they don't take care of their eggs and they don't take care of their babies. So they need to put the eggs in a safe place. So in Chile, where I study my master's, they know that these cat sharks lay their eggs in macroalgae, that we know as kelps. So when I was there, and these macroalgae are known to form this big forest underwater, so kelp forest. So when I was there, I asked, okay, what makes this kelp forest attractive for the sharks? And what makes this a safe place to lay their eggs to avoid predation? So to understand this, we measure certain characteristics of this kelp that we call characteristics that form structural complexity, because we know that habitats that are highly complex in structure provide or increase biodiversity. And in this case, we believe that they will provide a refuge for the shark. So we measure things like the vertical dimension of the plants. so how tall the plants were, how big the holdfast of the plant was. This is the attachment structure to the rock of the plant. The number of the types of these plants, so how many branches it had. And also how the cover of the forest. What we found is that the sharks selected places with very tall plants. So the bigger the plants, the more eggs we will find. Big holdfast, so the attachment structure to the bottom. The bigger it was, the more eggs. And also these habitats needed to be highly dense and need to be aggregated, like tight. So what does this mean in terms of avoiding predation? What we thought is, first, the vertical dimension allowed them to circle around these plants and pull the eggs out. And the eggs will hang from this kelp far from the bottom. So avoiding predators that were in the rocky bottom. But the kelp needed to be strong enough so the currents wouldn't destroy and drag these plants. There were other kelps that were bigger than this one, but the holdfast was too small. So the sharks knew that, and they wouldn't lay the eggs there, because that meant that the currents will drag their eggs and they will wash in the beach. And also they needed to be highly dense and tight to avoid large predators to come and navigate in these forests to find the eggs. But that wasn't true. So after studying these kelp forests for almost a year, I started finding signs of predation. So a lot of the eggs were broken. Actually, most of them that were new, they were open and empty. I was like, all right, everything that I learned about nursery habitats is not that perfect. That's what happens in nature. Ecology is not that perfect. So we found that basically there was a kelp crab that was able to climb to the kelp. That's why it's called a kelp crab. And was always hanging around the eggs. And we will always find this crab around a cluster of eggs. And all the eggs were broken and they will eat these eggs. You can ask me more questions about that. This is very interesting. But when I studied this, when I found this, I started having new ideas, and this is what took me to my next place to study predator and prey interactions. This is where I got all my ideas to do my Ph.D. I knew I wanted to study shark nurseries and predator and prey interactions, but this idea that they will proactively avoid predators wasn't entirely true. It's one of the main strategies, but there was something else. So what else they can do if that is not the main strategy? What if we have nursery habitats where there are predators? So that takes me to the next example. This is safety in the shallows. And that took me to the island of Morea. So I traveled from Chile all the way to the middle of the Pacific to Morea in French Polynesia. Here, black-tip reef sharks use nurseries. Use shark nurseries very close to the coast, what we call as flats. In this case, these are very shallow areas attached to the coast. And they live and they give birth to baby sharks here. There's a research station here from the French government called the Trujillo, and they've been tracking these nurseries around this island. This is the island of Morea. It's very famous because it has this heart shape. It's like a honeymoon island. It's an amazing island. And it's a honeymoon for the sharks as well. They reproduce a lot here. So we find a lot of sharks, especially in these areas that we call flats. That's the yellow area around the island. And these dots here are the monitoring sites that we had to go fish and monitor these areas to know what was going on in these places. The French government, through the Trujillo station, have been doing this for many years before I got there. So we knew a little bit about these areas already. What was different in this place from many other nurseries is, again, there were predators. This is almost all of them are adult sharks. So we have blacktip reef sharks here, North sharks, lemon shark there, and I think it got caught in this video, but there were like also blacktips. So there's two species of blacktip and blacktip reef sharks. All these adult sharks that are known to be predators of the young sharks, so the big adult sharks eat their own babies. They are the main predators at that stage of life. They were accessing these areas. So what could they do if this happens? So one of the first things we did some drone surveys in these shallow areas, and this is the study of Jake Edwards. He was a master's student that I supervised when I was there. And we quantified how many baby sharks were there and how many adult sharks were there. In short, what we found is that predator densities were high in this place, and the encounter rates were also high between the predators and the prey. In fact, we found many. We will fish these places every single night for 6 months. And every now and then we'll find sharks, the baby sharks are this size, with shark bites. These are the teeth of the shark. But what was interesting is that they were alive. So they had interaction with predators, and apparently many interactions with predators, but they were still alive. So something else was going on here. So if there's many sharks and they're having many interactions with sharks in these places, why using these shallow waters? Why we only find the baby sharks in these shallows and not everywhere else? There must be something really important in this place. And it wasn't that there were no sharks or no predators. There was something else going on here. So what else they can do to manage that predation risk, to avoid predators? So if we go to the end of that interaction, the final stage, when the predator decides to attack, the prey have one final opportunity to avoid predation. And they are called reactive strategies. Of course, you are reacting to a predator. This is your final chance. And in fish, especially in coral reef fish, these reactive strategies are called fast starts because they are very fast. When the predator attacks, they move. If you've been swimming, diving, doing the snorkel, and you do like this, like a click, and spook the fish, you're going to see that they escape very fast. Probably some of them are doing a fast start, escape response. What is this? The fish, when it gets attacked, so this is the prey, and this is the predator, when it gets attacked, it will bend its body very fast to change the direction of swim so it can escape from that attack. The predator is doing this, and the fish will change direction, and the predator will miss the fish. So the main objective of that strategy is just to escape the capture zone to a safe zone. So that gives the prey a second chance to go find a refuge, to keep swimming away from the predator, or just to depart the area. So the main thing is just escaping that safe zone. It gives them a second chance. So what we thought was going on here, why they were in these shallow areas and not out there, was that probably they were using these escape responses, and for some reason they were better at escaping in these shallow areas compared to outside these areas. So it was an escape advantage in these habitats. So there's a relationship here between the behavior and the habitat. So what we needed, first we needed to find out if they were doing these escape responses or not, and characterize these escape responses. And then we correlated that escape responses with some habitat characteristics, like temperature of the habitat, water depth of the habitat, and the habitat structure. To do that, we obviously needed sharks. So we went out to these nurseries and collected some sharks, these baby sharks with these gill nets. We will collect samples from them, so we usually will work the shark on the coast. This was a very easy fishing. We will drive in our cars to the coast, put this gill net, fish for 3 hours, and every shark we will take, we'll sample in a cooler, get blood. Many different studies were happening at the same time, getting blood, measurements, releasing the shark again to the habitat. But for my study, I needed to bring these sharks to the lab. So I did that to study the escape responses. So I brought the baby sharks to a big pool in the lab, and we simulated a predator attack. And we recorded their response to know whether they were doing these escape responses or not. It was the first thing that we needed to do. So this video here is a GoPro recording at high speed from above the pool. And through this pipe, there's going to be, you're not going to see it, but we will drop a weight. And that weight will hit the water. It wouldn't touch the shark. It will hit the water close to the shark, and that will spook the shark. It will respond, and we can measure things, like scientific things, like speed, how fast it is to react, angles, and stuff like that. So this video is going to play at normal speed, and then you're going to see it slow down. So you can see how actually it looks like, and then how it's when it slows down. Done. Now it's slow. Again, the same. And I want to play it again so you see how fast it is. Done. That's it. You can even see it. Most of what you're seeing is not the actual escape response, it's the after part of the escape response. It's extremely fast. That's why it's effective to avoid predators. So now we have this bunch of videos, hours to work in front of the computer. And what you saw is what we call a C-start escape response. Because the shark, what it's doing is bending its body into a C shape. But right after that, and that's that orange part, into a C shape. That's the main part to change direction. And after that, they bend to the other side and escape. So when you get some data, this is how the escape response looks like. So that's turning rate. These are some angles by seconds. So the first bend is that first peak, and the valley is the bend to the other side. So a bend to one side, positive, a bend to the other side, negative. That helps us classify the response, basically. Because there's two bends, it's called a double bend escape response. We're very, we have a lot of imagination, scientists. Double bend escape response. But they were also able to do single bend escape response. So only one bend. And this is really important in terms of performance. And I will explain you why later. So, okay, we knew they did these fast starts. Seemed to be good, and we can use that data to see how good they were. One of the first things we want to know is how fast they are to react to a stimulus. So when that weight touched the water, we wanted to know how fast between the stimulus and the first reaction. You need how fast they were mentally to respond. So that's called latency, reaction time. That was like less than 20 milliseconds. 4 to 6, one of the fastest ones. Milliseconds. This is extremely fast. They were also very agile. So they were fast at turning, and also the turns were very tight. So very similar to coral reef fish that navigate in corals. So they need to turn in very tight spaces. So very fast at responding, very agile. But in terms of propulsive performance, like speed, they were not that fast. So it seems like their strategy is being fast at reacting and being agile. That's going to be important for later. So how this relates to the environment? It's like, all right, if they can escape and they are really fast and really agile, why they don't do this everywhere? Why we only find them in one specific place? So we correlated this with the water temperature. And we did the same thing again, simulated these predator attacks at different temperatures. A lot of time, month, doing this. And we found that the warmer the water, the fastest they were to respond. Because warm water makes your brain being faster. Like the processing in their brains were faster. And also faster turns. So they're faster at responding and faster at doing that bend. This is great. If these habitats are warm enough, maybe they have a chance and they can have the highest performance to escape predators. So then we wanted to know what temperatures they are exposed in the habitats. So I placed these temperature loggers in the reefs. Don't worry, I'm not destroying the reef. I'm putting the rebar in the sand. And we left these temperature loggers there for 4 years. Came back, well, I came back many times, but once we had all the data, we had like 4 years of data, we were able to create a 24-hour cycle in November, December to February. These are the months that we find the baby sharks in these places. So this is 4 years of data, 1 day, 1 day, 1 day, and 1 day. And you can see how that temperature fluctuates. That's the blue. It fluctuates between what we thought it was the ideal performance. So this is 31, where we found the highest performance, the fastest reactions, and the fastest turns. And you see how around 2 p.m., the water temperature in their habitats reached that point. Just right before the worst day, the worst time of the day, sunset, just before sunset, which allowed the sharks to warm up for the worst part of the day when predators are more active. And likely that allowed them to stay warm during the night when the temperature dropped. So the habitats were perfect temperature for allowing them to have the highest performance possible. Temperature outside these places was colder. But what about depth? And I want you to see this video first. These are adult blacktips. We know they are adults because they were mating. That light shark is a female. And that's what I want you to see. Did you see what happened at the end? When the sharks saw me and they got spooked, and these are adults, the predators, when they got spooked, when they beat their tails, instead of, when they're beating their tails, what they want is to generate energy to escape. But instead of generating energy, their energy gets dispersed in the water. So those are the waves. We knew this is a phenomenon that happens. This is hydrodynamics. So we thought, okay, are these nurseries shallow enough to cause that in the large predators, but not in the prey performance, not to the baby sharks? So we did a lot of math to calculate and understand this, something that is called a submergent depth. So we wanted to know relative to the water depth how submerged the shark was. Was it shallow or not? For doing that, we needed to measure the size of the caudal fin of the sharks. We did it for newborn sharks, baby sharks, and we did it for adult sharks. We can calculate that index. And we know, based on mathematical theory and some experiments that happened in the past, we knew that when that index was 3, then, or below, there's energy loss. So if we have habitat water depths, you can calculate different index for these sharks at different water depths. And when your line crosses that line, that the dashed line, 3, that's the point at which the animals will experience that hydrodynamic cost. So we did that for newborn sharks, the prey, for adult sharks, the predators, and as you can see, the adult sharks cross that line first, before the newborn sharks, when the water was about 1 meter, which means that if the water is 1 meter or less, the adult sharks won't be that good at attacking. But the newborn sharks, they're still good, because they won't cross the line until the water is even shallower. So that allowed the newborn sharks to stay in that water and be an advantage over the large predators, just because the water was shallow. So we wanted to know, are the habitats shallow enough for them to do that? I did some mapping to calculate the depth of the water very close to the coast. This is actually very difficult, but luckily we had really good data from the French government. And I calculated the depth of their habitats. That's the yellow parts. And we found that the habitats, on average, these are the profiles of their habitats. That's the nurseries. These are the nurseries. They were less than 1 meter on average, about 0.7 meters, which means that all the predators on the entire habitat will not be able to perform at the same level as the prey. So the prey had the advantage if they encounter predators there, as opposed to in the deep water. In the deep water, probably the adult sharks had the advantage. But in the shallow water, the prey baby sharks had the advantage. We did something very similar with the habitat types, and we found that these habitats were dominated by corals. Corals are highly complex, and you need to be very agile to navigate in these places. So basically, in summary, what we found is that there were some safety in these shallow places because the temperature was good enough for them to escape from predator, optimal performance. Also, it was very shallow, so they had a hydrodynamic advantage. And they were structurally complex coral reefs, so the sharks, because they were more agile than the adults, had the advantage to navigate here. So that gave them an advantage over their predators in this place. And that's why we were finding these sharks in these shallow places and not everywhere else, because they were able to escape their predators. They have that last chance by performing these escape responses. And I know that's a lot of science. But this takes me to my last example and why I'm here, why I'm in the Keys. So as you saw, I study the behavior of predators and prey. I understand how the different behavioral decisions that they take is affected by the environment. But what happens when the sharks become a problem? When a shark, instead of getting prey on its own, it does a behavior that is not that normal, and it gets prey from someone else, like humans. From humans fishing, and that's what we call shark depredation. That's an issue that we're having all over the world, but especially in the Florida Keys. Fishers are losing their prey to sharks, and many of these fisheries are catch and release because of conservation measures. So as a result of these negative interactions between sharks and humans, fisheries are experiencing high mortality, and this is threatening the conservation of many fisheries. So we need to understand these interactions to find a solution to protect sharks, so people don't want to go out and kill them because they're stealing their fish, but also to protect the fisheries, to reduce the predation, the mortality that fishers don't want. So for that, now I'm working for Bonefish Tarpon Trust. We're an NGO that works to conserve and protect bonefish and tarpon fisheries and their habitats. And also we work on these emerging threats to the fishery to understand them and find solutions. So this shark depredation is a conflict between sharks and humans. And in the Keys, it's affecting many fisheries. So these are examples of many species getting eaten by the sharks. And it involves many shark species, like lemon sharks and bulls, and many others. So this is a very complex network of predator and prey interactions. So we need to start from the big picture, getting smaller, downscaling this issue to understand shark behavior. So to do that, BTT works with something that is called a co-production approach. Are we good with time? Yeah. Perfect. So BTT worked with what we call a co-production approach. Basically, scientists work together with the fishing community as peers to produce knowledge and use that knowledge to find solutions. So to do that, we collect what we know local knowledge. So we think as the fishers, as professionals and experts in their field. And we collect this information from them. We did this with an online survey. Fishers were able to respond to some questions that we had in their computer. We analyzed that data, and we had a workshop with a group of fishing guides to analyze that data, find hypotheses, and define what research we needed to do. So as a result of that, the first thing that we wanted to do is find conflict areas, okay? There's many shark species and many fisheries affected, but is this happening everywhere in the Keys or in specific places? And these are the hotspots that we have here, the red areas. Those are the conflict areas. So we found and defined these areas that help us for management to see where we needed to go and do research. And we also started establishing those predator and prey interactions. So which sharks are attacking which fishery? One of the most important ones was lemon sharks affecting the snook fishery in the flamingo area, and the great hammerhead sharks affecting the adult tarpon fishery in the breaches. So we had that information. This is great, so we know in which species of sharks to focus and what fisheries. But we learned from the local community, and they felt that lemon sharks were the worst of all the species of sharks that we found. And they were mainly active in that flamingo area, so in the other side of Florida Bay. And they were affecting mainly snook. So we were able to map in which areas they were affecting this fishery. And these are like these red areas here that we call hotspots. So how we study lemon shark behavior and how we use that information to find solutions. So the first thing that we are doing, we use a combination of technologies. First, we study the shark movement using acoustic tracking. We put a device in the shark, we release it, and we can track where it goes. We're also tracking interaction with boats. And we do this with highly visible tags that we put in the dorsal fins of the sharks. They don't have numbers. This is just a color code. So if a fisher sees a shark close to its boat, it can identify the colors and they report back to us because we work together. And we also study the diet of the sharks. We want to know what they are eating and if these have changed over the years. We collect blood, muscle, and also feces to understand diet. So this is some of the results of the tracking of the movement. And this plot here shows the time of the day and the hotspots. And that line there is the time when the fleets arrive to the hotspots in Flamingo. We learned from the fishing community that on average, they arrive to these places to start fishing about 8 a.m. in the morning. More or less, not that perfect, but more or less, they leave Isla Morada at 7 a.m. and they get there about 8 a.m. So when do the sharks arrive? Any guesses? 7:55?
8:15 to 8:30.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The sharks are arriving even before the boats get there.
And there's a reason for that.
Exactly. And this is what we call anticipatory behavior. This is evidence of a learning process. So they don't need to hear the boats anymore. They know where to find them, and they arrive there before them. But we found that not all the sharks that we were tagging are doing this. So these red ones are what we call these highly resident sharks. It was just a group of sharks. And then we have plenty of other sharks tagged that we call intermittent users. Those are the blue dots. The arrival time of these sharks is all over the place. So they are not really waiting for the boats. They are just there and using these habitats. So it seems like it's just a group of sharks that learn to track the boats. Also, what we're seeing This is an animation of a shark, one single shark, tracked for more than 100 days. So this is their estimated movement in the hotspots. And they show what we call high fidelity. So they come to the same spots over and over for long periods of time, 150 days. And this shark here is coming over and over to Palm Key. Palm Key is one of the hotspots. So it shows that repetitive behavior. It knows that it's going to find a free meal in this place, and it's going to go over and over to that place. But what are we seeing is just the normal activity of the sharks, or are they here because they want to depredate the boats? We needed more information to understand that. What we saw, it could be just normal activity of the sharks. So to learn that, we use the color tags and the interactions with the boats. The fishers have been reporting the interactions with boats, and about 28% of the sharks that we tag have been re-sighted. These are pictures from some of the fishermen of the sharks that carry the tags. Sometimes they even catch them because they go there to catch sharks. They catch them and release them. And some even have multiple interactions. Like one shark was detected and re-sighted by multiple fisheries exactly in the same place 3 times, Palm Key. So that shark is interacting multiple times. So it seems like they are here to interact with the boats. But we need a little bit more information to know that. And it's the diet. Are they here to eat the fish that fishermen catch or not? What we know about lemon shark diet in this habitat from back in the 90s, when depredation wasn't a problem, is that lemon sharks like to eat a small fish, like toadfish, pinfish, mullet. This is low trophic level fish. Lemon sharks don't eat big fish. They do not eat high trophic level, big game fish, like snook, tarpon, redfish. They don't eat this, and this is from studies in the 90s in Flamingo. So what is happening now? These are the results from DNA analysis of the feces of the sharks that we collected from the sharks. And these are the different prey species. And they are organized from the most probable species to the less probable one. And as we expected, they were eating mullet and catfish. They were the top main prey items that we found on their diet. But the third most important one was a snook. As you can see, a snook contrasts with the low trophic level, the small species up there, and it contrasts with the rest of the diet. The rest of the diet was what we expected: pinfish, toadfish, a ladyfish. So snook is odd here, is the weird species. So it's very likely that they are obtaining this through depredation, and that they are using these hotspots to obtain snook. It's a resource that they cannot obtain on their own. So when we give them the chance by hooking a fish, this is a free meal. I don't have to waste time in finding the prey, encountering the prey, detecting the prey. We do all that. So it's an easy meal. That's why we see these responses of this anticipatory behavior in the sharks. So as a result, we get into conflict with the sharks, and this is affecting us as humans, affecting our fisheries. So in summary, these hotspots are not just random. Depredation is not just happening everywhere. It's happening in specific places. These hotspots are not all the same. We have different species, different fisheries affected. And because of that, the reasons we are seeing this are likely to be different. So far, at least with lemon sharks, it seems like this is a learned behavior, and that's why a group of sharks is driving the conflict. But we're still working on finding answers, or why this started like 10 years ago and why this was not happening 50 years ago. As BTT, we are using this information and reporting this to the fishing community to have a plan for the next year. And it's like, all right, what we learn all this, what can we do, and what is the best strategy? And these strategies are gonna come from a discussion between the scientists and the fishing community to find a solution next year. And next year we're gonna test those solutions. So I hope that wasn't that much. So I accept questions.
That's perfect. Sounds like Marta has a question right off the bat.
So that was really, really interesting, and I didn't even know this work was going on, so it's amazing. But do you have any theories that you're willing to share as to what maybe started this behavior 10 years ago?
This is a really good question, and that's basically the question I need to answer at the end of my job. It's complicated. It's usually not one factor. It's not one thing that caused this. And what we're seeing is that it's probably a combination of factors that come from a recovery in shark populations. Lemon sharks were protected in 2010, and after that, they've been recovering. They haven't come back to great numbers, but their population stabilized, which means they're not dying anymore. If they're not dying anymore due to fishing, they're having different interactions with boats. That, combined with potential legacy effects. Florida bays have been changing for years. It's been affected by anthropogenic activities, like, for example, the whole change in the water regime and other factors that is affecting this ecosystem. We've seen multiple seagrass die off that affects the prey populations. As a result, this could have affected the prey that lemon sharks were eating. And as a result, they needed to find like an alternative. And in the presence of boats, that was the best alternative. But this is not, don't take this as an absolute truth, because it's a combination of factors that we're still exploring. Yeah?
If this is a learned behavior, wouldn't it be possible to, like, if you could isolate an area and just block it off and say, we don't want anyone to catch fish here, to see if the sharks will stop trying to catch the fish? Do you think that would work?
So there's an example of this. In Morea, where I was studying sharks, there's a place that is called like a shark feeding place. And they have years of data of the sharks learning to go to these places because they are like hand-fed. During COVID, that provided like a natural experiment. Nobody was going out. So during that time, what happened is that the sharks gave up and they depart the area. However, when boats came back, the sharks quickly came after, I believe it was 1 or 2 weeks. It took them 1 or 2 weeks for the same sharks to come back to the same place. So that behavior is very difficult to erase. And the other thing is that if we close these places, many people lose their jobs. It's like, where are they going to go fishing? If we find other places, they're probably going to be very close to these places. So the sharks are going to quickly migrate to the new fishing grounds. So I believe so far that the best strategy is to break that learning cycle. And there are ways of doing this, like shark deterrents. Shark deterrents that don't kill the sharks, but they break that learning cycle. They annoy the shark, so they are not successful at getting this prey. If you are not successful in getting prey, you're going to give up and you're not going to spend energy in that strategy. That and a combination of other strategies that we are exploring. So it's very complicated to close places, but we'll see what happens next year. Yeah.
Yeah, is it possible to have a dualistic approach somehow? And I guess over time, I'm not a naturalist or anything, but I'm just thinking statistically speaking, probabilistically speaking. Okay, so you try to provide them with the former prey that they could get and make it such a concentration so it's easier without causing the ecosystem to go nuts on the other side, as well as I know you're thinking of things like probably electromagnetic deterrence, stuff like that. I mean, I haven't looked at them with lemon sharks. I've seen them with other sharks, and they're kind of like, I call it hoodoo.
Which one have you tried?
More or less like bull sharks.
Which device? Do you know?
Oh, they sell them. You can go down to Divers Direct, and they have these magnetic devices that divers can wear. And,
the shark bands.
Yes, and I have not seen.
Yeah, the shark bands doesn't work very well.
Yeah, they don't work. That's why I call them hoodoo.
The sharks detect the shark band. It's been proven they can detect this magnet, but the signal is not strong enough to prevent them from getting a fish that they really want. And there's another one that we want to try. Instead of the magnetic devices, is an electrical field that have been shown to be a little bit better, way better.
I wonder if the Navy has something for you to use.
The Navy?
Navy, yeah.
I wonder if they have. They tested a lot of shark deterrents back in the day for pilots.
I'll investigate that myself.
Let me know.
But
we already exchanged contacts, so we will be in touch.
But furthermore, one big thing is I noticed when fishing, and I'm not trying to take up a lot of time, but this is kind of important. I see usually a fishing charter of about 10 or 15 people. I see buckets of blood and chum. And what happens is that, as you know, it blows the perdition chain to sugar. I'm using the word sugar to be kind, but I've been there diving and watched and seen bull sharks that weren't there magically appear, and they get so excited, they are moving so fast that I've got to go inside the wreck and hide for a little while just because, so we don't bump into each other. So the overstimulation, I don't know how to counteract that if you can do that with the deterrent device, unless there's some happy medium of that as well as introducing something for them to eat,
Yeah, so it seems like the sharks still have their natural prey available. We're still trying to understand. So we still found pinfish and toadfish, for example, in their diet, not very often. So we're not very sure if they are not eating that because they don't have it, or just because eating snook from a line is a better deal. So we still need to do research to understand whether it is worth trying to, repopulate the stock of prey. We don't know that yet. I believe so. And the other thing that we were talking about is that overstimulation, how like boats with a lot of blood and fish. This is an effect that we know for many years, and we see it in our daily life. I bet many of you have seen raccoons eating the garbage. That's exactly the same effect as fishing. We as humans are highly predictable and accumulate food in a specific place every single day. So the raccoons learn that this is a source highly predictable, and they don't have to spend much energy. So they go and eat from there. So that's the effect that we're seeing when there's a lot of fishing. But the thing here is that we need to understand both sides. It's like we could blame fishers for, okay, there's a lot of them, but a lot of them, that's their jobs as well. And we need to understand that, well, we need to find a solution, and that solution needs to consider a way that they can keep fishing and not just closing fishing forever. Because fishing is actually what brings money to the Florida Keys, and there's like these positive side effects of fishing, because people is interested in the habitats of the fish, they're willing to protect the Florida Keys. So we need to find a balance. It's about coexisting between sharks and humans.
Let's see the parallels in research you did, why they got you.
Thanks. I think we have a...
One more question.
This is from one of our online viewers, Ethan DeWald. Are you able to discuss at this time some of the proposed plans for mitigating depredation interactions that will be tested next year?
Yeah, the one that I can tell you is the use of deterrents. We are going to test commercially available deterrents and potentially test new alternatives, like new devices that haven't been tested. Potentially. I cannot discuss other strategies because, as I said, we work with the fishing community, and the strategies usually come from discussions from them. So we are still working with the fishing community and with our policy department to see what are the best strategies. But deterrents are for sure one of the strategies that we want to use.
Thank you so much. So it was just a wonderful combination of your professional journey, your scientific journey through the different environments, fish behavior, hydrodynamics, temperature, and people, and I think that's what we here at REEF are all about, is understanding fish so that we can understand ourselves better and help each other protect. So thank you for a wonderful, wonderful talk.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
I'm very pleased to present you with the